Next, I'm going to turn the taper on here, and this is a 60-degree taper. So I've set the compound at 30 degrees. Didn't take much. And now to straight turn again, what was it, 3/32 of an inch here, to take a little bit of the knurl off. That's optional. It probably would be okay to eliminate that. Countersink just a little bit. Now you can polish with emery cloth or file or whatever you need to do. I do very little of that. Next I'll make the little sleeve here, and it's rather simple, starting with a 1/4 inch stock, and it can just be soft material. And it is going to be, let's get some dimensions on this. As far as the length is concerned, it's 0.726. The diameter here is 212. The larger diameter is 243, just a little less than the 1/4 inch. Not too critical, it just has to slide freely into here. Now the hole, again, it's really an 1/8 inch hole, but drill it number 30. That way it will easily accommodate the 1/8 inch rod here, the drill rod that we're going to make that out of. If you just drill it 1/8 inch, that's not going to go in. Remember that, again, that's for the self-storing feature, and if you're not in the mood, you don't have to drill that at all. Alright, let's go over to the, I think I'll use the Atlas lathe for that. Here we go on the Atlas lathe. I'm going to turn this diameter down to 215, and the length was, let me see here, 720 thousandths up to that shoulder, and I've already set the carriage stop for that length. And I'm using high-speed steel for that. The tool, that is, not the material. That's kind of hard material I grabbed out of my box. I hope it's not. Almost feels like drill rod. Long stringy chips. Break the corner. Now I'm going to center drill it. You may have remembered me making this center drill driver. I need to take the rust off of that. Wish I knew how. And that's got an 1/8 inch point on it. So don't use a center drill that is larger than 1/8 inch, because remember, my final drill size here momentarily will be a number 30. And yes, I do call for a lot of oddball tools, I think, in this video, cutting tools. And I hope if you intend to make one of these that you have those tools. You can see how hard that steel is. This is a stubby number 30 drill bit. Those are pretty common at the hardware store because a lot of people like to use those for pop rivets, because then you don't have to fight the rivet as you try to get it into the so-called 1/8 inch hole. That is an 1/8 inch pop rivet. Okay, now as far as the depth is concerned, I checked, but if I drill right up to the end of the flutes, I am at the right length or right depth. This is going to be hard drilling, so I won't show all of it. I hope I don't break the bit off. I should have gone back and got some softer steel. Before I take the work out and cut it off, I need to countersink this end. And the purpose of that is that this ball rides in the countersink. Now it would be ideal to have a radius there using a ball end mill, but there's almost nothing left there, so I'm going to sharpen it or countersink it to almost to where it comes to a sharp knife edge, which isn't removing very much metal, but I'm just explaining the purpose of countersinking it. That's all there is to that. This steel is so blame hard, it almost turned a little bit of a straw color, I'll swear, which means it got up to 400 degrees. And I did burn my finger, by the way, but I'm going to cut it off with a hand hacksaw, and then I'll put it back in the lathe and face it off to length. This little step here is approximately 80 thousandths. It's not very critical at all. So now with the work in the chuck, I'll face it off the length, and I believe I got room to get in here and measure it. Believe heck, I do have room. And then, when I get it to the right size, I'll countersink it nicely like that. I won't show all of that. Okay, there's the finished sleeve. So I'm making a lot of progress here. And remember that this countersunk portion here is what the ball actually rides in and swivels on as it's pushed with the spring. And it again loads like this. Then there'll be a spring there, and you can see about how much it sticks out there. So those 1, 2, 3 parts are finished, and I need to move on now to make the various attachments that use a ball. So where am I going to find a ball? Well, besides going to the hardware store to look for a ball, I wonder if I have any here. Oh man, a whole drawer full. Let me take this over to the bench and we'll have a look. Now these are balls that I have accumulated really over a lifetime, I guess, and many given to me, picked up at auctions, such as a whole bunch of boxes of Ford balls here. I don't know why Ford sold separate balls, but they did. But if you are the type of guy that just collects ball bearing races like this, and you take these apart, you're going to find the balls in there, and a lot of these came from just that source. But you're going to find that those are metric, almost invariably are metric in size. And I suppose you could redesign your wiggler so that it accommodates those, but I wanted to use a 5/16 ball like the original. And as luck would have it, I have plenty of 1/4-inch balls and 2 boxes of the Ford 3/8 balls. But 5/16 balls, no, not so lucky. But looking through these loose ones here, I did find a handful of them. And also I have these brass balls that I mentioned came, or maybe I didn't mention, I think these came off with a monkey in the park, but I'm going to use one of those. But there's a nice selection of balls. But let me show you in a little trip to the hardware store where you might find the balls without ordering them. You can get them from McMaster-Carr or many different sources, but with minimum charges and shipping and the time lag and all that, it's a nuisance. So let's go down to Ace Hardware. All right then, I'm in Ace Hardware, and thank goodness I couldn't find anybody to help me because I wanted to be on my own. But you know, these hardware stores have huge selections in these little boxes here of just about anything your little heart desires. And it took me a while to find it because there must be hundreds of boxes, but you can see it's marked ball bearing all the way from 1/16 up to 5/8 diameters. So there's the 5/16, and they are 37 cents each. That's the end bin here. It seems that the 3/8 is out of stock. And have you ever noticed that when you go into these stores, there's always a lot of empty bins because nobody ever bothers to order them and renew them. But my finger there is in the 5/16, and I bought a couple of those, and there you can see the empty bin. So hope you enjoyed my little shopping trip, but that's probably where you're going to find it. I doubt if they'll have something so obscure in a box store, but I really didn't look. I spent 5 minutes sorting through these balls here. I pulled them out with a magnet, and some of them were metric that appeared to be 5/16, but I found plenty of 5/16ers in there, and then I also got a brass one. These are too hard to drill, and I do want to drill the hole and then Loctite the pin into place. So in order to drill these, I have to soften the hard balls, and I'll do that by annealing, and I'll do several of them right now, and it's really a very simple procedure. So let's do that next. Alright, I'm going to anneal 2 or 3 of these balls, and a 1/4-inch ball as well, and you'll see why in a minute. But you need some decent way to hold them. This is a piece of 5/16 brake line, and I'm just using it kind of like a T in a driving range, so hang on to it. And I'm using my MAP torch. Propane probably will not be sufficient. And the whole idea is to turn the ball red hot. You've seen me do this before on other projects. And maintain it at its critical temperature of red for a few moments so it is soaked, so to speak. And then I'll let it cool slowly. Doesn't take very long. Matter of fact, that thin tubing is going to get red a lot sooner than the ball. There you can see the ball is red. You maintain that for a few minutes. A few seconds, I mean. Just remove the hardness. Now it's at its critical temperature. The magnetism is gone, as I showed you in other videos. And now I'm going to let it cool, but it needs to cool slowly. How am I going to do that? If you were in an oven, you could turn the oven off and just let it slowly cool. But I like to just play the torch on it every once in a while so it's cooling slowly. Once the color is gone, it's just a matter of judgment. But you'd like to let it cool over about a 2-minute period. And then it's going to be soft. You do not want to quench it. And I'll do that with 2 other balls. Well, I have annealed 4 balls. again, this is what we're doing, and I want to drill a hole, but not quite all the way through. So here's 1, 2, 3, 5/16 balls and a 1/4 inch ball, and that's the brass ball. But how are we going to go about holding that when we drill it? And there's several different ways, but first let me show you how I did the prototype. I'm not really going to do that now, but it's an option for you, and that'll be on the Bridgeport mill. These today I'm going to drill, I hope, on the Atlas lathe. So let's go over to the Bridgeport and show you an optional way of doing this if you do not have collets. Again, here at the Bridgeport, I'm showing you how to drill an 1/8 inch hole into a softened ball. Now, how are you going to hold it? If you hold it in the regular hardened jaws, you're liable to put flat spots on the ball by squeezing it. So what I've done here is several things. First of all, you've seen these aluminum magnetic parallels that I have. Well, the magnets are as annoying as what they are useful, but I'm putting them in there, and you see they will not damage the ball. If anything, I'll damage the parallels. Now I have to put a wavy parallel in there, which now is going to interfere with the magnets, as you can see, so that when I drill the ball doesn't get pushed down. So now, using a magnet, trying to stay away from the other two magnets and find a good spot on the wavy parallel. I'm going to have to put it over here. Like that. And it doesn't have to be squeezed down too hard because it can't go anyplace. Now the next step is I will take an end mill, any old size, and mill a flat spot on there. By a flat spot I mean 2/1000ths I want to take off. Just a shiny spot on the black ball that'll show me where the center is. That'll show me the true center where I want to drill. Then I'll put the wiggler in there and be used, like I showed you a few minutes ago here, to locate that flat spot. And once that is done, are you following me? Lock the table in both directions and proceed to use this tiny center drill, which is a number 2, and then the 1/8 inch bit, and drill in 1/4 inch on a 5/16 ball, and you can use the depth stop. And as silly and complicated as all that seemed, it worked quite well. Alright, now over to the Atlas. I'm at the Atlas, and this will be the actual drilling, not just talking about it, but these are 3C collets. I do not recommend holding the balls in a 3-jaw chuck because, again, I think the clamping will cause flat spots on it. I'm not positive of that, but I have a 5/16 collet in the nose, and there's the ball. Now, I already did one, so I'll have to admit that. And just put it in so that it's being gripped. It doesn't have to go all the way in. And I'm tightening it down nice. I was very worried about the ball getting pushed back into the collet because I have no collet stops. And as far as I know, with a 3C, there is no such thing as a collet stop like we know on the 5Cs. But anyway, what I'm going to do now is to take a cut on there, kind of like what I just told you on the Bridgeport, just enough to create a tiny flat spot. Oh, I always try to start this thing in back gears. Now that may not even show up in the video, I don't know, but there's some shavings that came off. So now there's a flat spot. I don't know if that's totally necessary, but if you don't have a flat spot, I always think that the drill bit wants to slip off the center. Now again, this is a number 2 center drill. So I'm going to put that in the chuck. bring it up. And by the way, this annealing worked quite well because the ball is soft. Engage it very slowly, and you see it grips right into that flat spot. It's very easy to break off one of these tiny center drills, so take it easy. And you don't have to go in very deep, just enough to establish the hole. I treated myself to a brand new 1/8 inch stubby bit. Again, I love those stubby bits. A little Earl, and I'm going to go in 1/4 of an inch. Just make sure you don't drill all the way through it. And I'm watching the quill graduation. I'm not feeding too hard because I don't want the possibility of pushing the ball into the collar. And it is dead soft and drilling very nicely. So the annealing works. Well, what's there not to work? That's it. I'll back it out. That's the stubby drill bit. Put shank end in first just to proof it and show you that it's running pretty darn true. And I'll do that to the other balls as well. There's the balls all drilled. There's 1/4 inch balls, the little ones, just in case I need them. And then the 5/16, and then there's the brass one. I tell you, that sure did drill easily. Now, also note that there are no marks on there from the collets. I think a chuck would leave a mark, but I'm not, and it certainly would on the brass, which is so soft. Now the next thing I have to deal with is the pins or the rods here. So there are several sources, and I'm always thinking about you people out there in YouTube land that might be making some of these. I've got plenty of materials. It's not a big deal for me. But I was just checking for hardness, and these factory-made ones are hardened, but I'm not totally convinced you need them to be hardened. But a good source of hardened material is dowel pins, and here's my assorted dowel pins. There's an 1/8 inch dowel pin. It would have to be cut off and then sharpened, and I think I only got a couple of those. But here's some dowel pins that my brother gave me. Well, look at that rubber band. That must have been about 3 weeks ago, because that's about the life of a rubber band, isn't it? But this is the stock that I used on this. But an alternative, and I think the first one that I make I'm going to make from 1/8 inch drill rod, and I'm not going to harden it because this is pretty darn tough steel. So I'm going to cut this to length, and that will be the first rod or first pin, and let's see what the length is on that. About 1 3/4.